Welcome back, folks. I'm Frizz, and today I'd like to take some time to talk about crowd control, or to be more exact, fucking with enemies' action economies. See, if you're looking for a way to make someone's life pretty horrific, messing with their actions is the fastest way to do it in Pathfinder 2e. This is especially true the fewer enemies that you're fighting. Just think about it. If you're only fighting one really strong monster, if you grapple them or give them the slowed 1 condition, then you've just used up 1/3 of their actions for the turn in all likelihood. Now, I'm a bit biased here, since I just finished the Agents of Edgewatch adventure path while playing a character that's specialized in grappling and tripping people. It was an insane amount of fun, and part of that was just hearing my GM groan every single time I restrained and tripped a creature, and he knew that his plan for this fight just went right out the window. You've got my personal guarantee that playing a character specializing in crowd control is a blast. Well, how do you actually go about doing this? Well, I think there's two main ways of getting general crowd or action control in 2nd edition. First is the mundane stuff, and then there's the magical stuff. Let's talk about the mundane first. Alright, so the most obvious way to mess with other people's actions economy that isn't magical in nature is pretty simple. The athletic skill. Grappling and tripping and shoving and all that are surprisingly consistent if you have a decent strength score and a good proficiency. Knocking people to the ground and then putting them in a headlock is a very effective strategy in the real world, so it makes sense that it works in the game. Honestly speaking, basically every single martial character can do this effectively because they want to be next to people, and it's a skill, meaning that basically every single character in the game can be good at it. Some classes are going to be better than others though, but most are at least going to have a few ways to improve it. Barbarians, monks, and swashbucklers in particular are all amazing at it, but in different ways, and they get bonuses in different fashions. I'll also point out if that you're planning on grappling being a core part of your game plan, you really want to pick up the wrestler archetype. At high levels, Inescapable Grasp is a fantastic feat, and it's basically necessary because a lot of high-level creatures have a constant freedom of movement spell, and that kind of sucks if grappling is your main shtick. Another way to mess with an enemy's action economy is actually super simple. It's mobility. Generally speaking, if there are less enemies than party members, the enemy's actions are worth more than your own. Basically, if you spend your 3rd action to step away from someone or stride away from them, they're probably going to have to spend an action to get next to you again, or stride to hit someone else. Of course, this is only true if the enemy actually wants to be next to you, like if they're a fucking ogre with a club. It's not fancy in the slightest, but literally every PC can do this, so do keep it in mind. Alright, so let's talk about spells. Admittedly, I'm not super experienced in playing a spellcaster focused on battlefield control and action suppression, but I've played in parties where other PCs have kept that in mind when selecting their own spells. Basically, there are lots of spells with little rider effects that can annoy the hell out of enemies or just ruin their whole entire day. Some of them are pretty simple, like how Hydraulic Push can just move enemies around. Yeah, casting a level 1 Hydraulic Push is basically gonna do 0 meaningful damage at a high level, but you can still use it to push enemies around, forcing them to spend actions to actually approach the party again. Although with that example, make sure you aren't pushing them away from your friends who also want to be next to the enemy. Now we need to talk about some of the standout spells for this kind of stuff. The one particular spell that most of you are probably expecting is Slow. Seriously, it's an insanely powerful spell for only needing a 3rd level spell slot. The slowed condition is one of the strongest in the entire game, and critically failing against slow basically takes you out of the fight for the rest of the fight. Seriously, being slowed too is the worst. Synesthesia is another amazing spell, especially if you cast it on spellcasters or literally anyone who cares remotely about dexterity. I can't talk about every spell in the game, but generally speaking, anything that can knock someone prone, stun them, immobilize them, or give them conditions that could make certain actions just a fucking terrible idea are going to be worth it if you're only fighting a couple of creatures. Also, just a quick note here about spells. To get the most out of, let's say, knocking someone prone with a spell, your team actually has to cooperate with it. For example, if you knock a giant prone and then they just stand up and hit your allies twice, then you might have prevented a 3rd attack from that giant, but that third attack would have had a huge MAP penalty. Essentially, Pathfinder 2e is a game that rewards mobility and team tactics, so talk to your allies, goddammit. They should walk away from the giant, so then the giant has to spend an action to approach, and you basically took away 2 actions. As a final note here, I'd like to take some time to point out that all of this is just as important for GMs as it is for players. While spending the entire combat grappling a single PC into the dirt when the party's only fighting a single creature probably isn't a good idea because grappling doesn't do a lot of damage, read through all of NPC's spells. While a 6th level slow might not seem as tempting as a shiny 9th level spell, fucking over the entire party's action economy is probably a very smart move that is going to keep that NPC alive for much, much longer than, I don't know, casting a 9th level fireball. On the other hand, focusing on tactics like that too much, especially if you specifically target one PC over and over and over again, it might make them a little bit pissed off since they can't do anything. In that case, just let them know that that's how you feel. Thanks for watching. I know that this video covers some similar topics as my other video on athletics, but I did just finish an AP and a retrospective on that adventure path. One of the big things that we realized was just how valuable having a grappler specialist was. Also, like 50% of my Pathfinder characters are apparently people who specialize in grappling, so I might just have a type. What are your experiences with trying to restrict people's action economy, good or bad? Let me know in a comment down below. Also, because it's been a while since I've said this, like, comment, and subscribe, I guess? Maybe that'll do something? Regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life.